In the last video, we have been looking at controllers as a way to keep your projects clean, tidy them up. With controllers, you have the chance to extract logic that has been embedded in your templates and move that logic out of the templates. It looks like this. So you have a controller file where all the PHP logic is handled for your template, and then that controller file can pass variables to your template, and your templates just focus on the HTML. So you don't have that messy PHP code lying around here. And another way to keep your projects clean and dry, as it's often called, so not to repeat yourself, is with collections. And I want to show you what collections are today and how to use them. So when we have a look back at our projects page, this is just such a typical example where you have like collections of data, projects, products, blog articles, team members, any kind of stuff that would be arranged in a kind of collection. And you display it once on such a projects page like this here in a larger list or a larger collection. And then oftentimes what you want to do is you want to pull parts of that collection onto the homepage, for example, or on some other kind of feed page or something where content from many pages comes together and is being merged into a bigger page. And I want to show you today how to move or how to extract projects from your project page and show them on the homepage. And as a first step to do that, we go back to the projects template here and we take this list, because this is the list that we can reuse this exactly as it is here, and then maybe apply the styling a bit to the homepage, but the HTML for it is totally fine, so we can totally reuse this. And as a step to reuse this, we are going to cut it out and create a new snippet for it. And we call that snippet projects. And the good part about this is that we don't really have to do anything. It's already working fine. The indentation is a bit broken, but this doesn't really matter. I don't know why this just happened. But you can see we already introduced this projects variable here. So this is perfect for our snippet. And if we want to reuse it here, we can bring it back in with the snippet helper. And now everything should just look exactly the same as it has been looking before. So you can see projects still work, filters still work, everything's just doing what it should do. And this is cool. And now we can do, we can use the same snippet on our homepage and pull in the projects there. So as a first step, we need a home template because there is no home template so far. So we are going to start with the default one. Call it home. And let's just say we want to place that snippet here. And use projects again. Maybe it would also need a headline or something like this. Let's just forget about that, pull in the snippet, keep it nice and simple. And when we open this, you will see there is a problem here, because in our snippet, we define a projects variable that is not here on the homepage. That projects variable is something that is coming from our controller. If you remember that, in our projects controller, we introduced a projects variable, and that is being passed down to the template, and it's also propagating to all the snippets. So it's automatically being injected into our projects snippet on our projects template, but not on our home template, because we don't have a controller for our home template yet, and we don't introduce that variable to our home template. So one way to fix it would be to create a home.php controller and also introduce a projects variable there, and that it also gets injected into the snippet. But we can also inject it manually. So for those of you who've seen the snippets video a while back, I showed there how to introduce variables into snippets. And this is something you can always do, no matter if the controller introduced a variable first. You can always override it manually afterwards with that additional array that you pass to the snippet. So for example, if we want to create a projects variable in our project snippet. We do it like this, and then from there on, it's no longer undefined, and it's no longer going to throw an error in our snippet. So now we somehow have to get to our projects list again. And remember, we are now on the home page, so we are no longer in this area of our projects. We no longer have direct access via our children, because the children of the homepage don't exist, and even if they existed, they probably are not going to be the projects. So we somehow have to navigate to our projects page first and then get the children of that in order to create the same kind of list or the same kind of collection. And how can we do that? The page variable is no longer of use here because it references the home page in our home template. And as I said, the home page doesn't have any subpages, so yeah, it doesn't really help here. Kirby has a page helper though, and this page helper is basically a way to access any kind of page that you introduced in your site. So any page that you created in the content folder will be accessible with this page helper. It's pretty simple. So for example, if we want to go to our projects, we just pass in the folder name of our projects page or the slug of our projects page. If you want to go deeper and say we go to a particular project, we would say project A or whatever the project is called. So we could do this with any page in our site, move to the blog, move to the theme page, move to our shop, to a particular project, to a particular product, whatever you create. And then the result of that is either nothing or null if the page does not exist, or it's a collection of, it's not a collection of pages, it's a page object, of course. So in this case, it would be the page object for our projects page. And from there on, we can do the same things that we did on our projects template or in our projects controller. We can get our children here. And from here on, the snippet should work again. So let's check that out. So now we have a full list of all the projects that we created on our homepage. And this is probably not really what we want. So the first thing we want is, again, only get the listed ones, as we did in the projects controller as well. And then on the homepage, we probably also want to do some additional filtering. So a typical thing that you could do is to add a featured toggle to every project with the project blueprint. And then based on that toggle, you could show those projects here or not. So for example, if we had such a featured toggle, we could now do something like filter by featured true. So this would be a really simple way to say, okay, I can switch on featured projects and switch them off when they appear on the homepage or they don't appear on the homepage. Another way, if you don't have such a featured toggle and you say, okay, no, just give me anything that is in the portfolio that we have or in our shop or whatever, just make it a bit more interesting, would be to use the shuffle function or the shuffle method. So that's another method that is available for every collection. And whenever you call that, the collection will just be shuffled around. All items will be returned in random order. And then from there on, you could do something like a simple limit and say, okay, I shuffle those first, I shuffle the entire project list first, and then from the shuffled results, I'll only give me the last three, or the first three in this case. So now we only get 3 projects on the homepage, and whenever we reload, the list changes. Okay, it's not very interesting because we don't have that many projects, but you can see the idea behind it. So it constantly feels like something's going on our homepage, even though we just shuffle a few projects here. So that's quite a cool way of pulling those into our homepage and giving this effect of a nice entry point to our website. Okay, but I wanted to talk more about how to dry up those collections, and we haven't done this so far. So this is totally working fine, and we could outsource this again into its own home controller, as I said before. But oftentimes, when you work with such collections like the projects or blog articles, they turn up multiple times. So in this case, this collection already turns up twice. So it turns up in our home template, and it also turns up in our projects controller here, because this is basically the same thing, right? So it's turning up twice, not a big deal, but still there is a way how we can make this nicer. So very much like controllers, we can create our own collections in the same fashion. So we create a collections folder first. And then once the collections folder is there, we can create collection files in there. So a new file, and then we just can decide the name for the file. In this case, I call it projects again. I'm super creative. And most of the times you end up with the same names anyway. So now we've created our projects collection, and we have to write a bit of PHP code in here. And the good thing is that the PHP code for collections looks very much the same as for our controllers. We don't have to relearn anything here. So it's returning a function, and within this function, we can now return the collection that we want to return. So let's go back to the home template and take this part here, because this is the part that has been turning up twice, as you remember. So it turns up here, and it also turns up in our projects controller. So we cut this out and move it into our collection. And now we also need to return the result. So now we return the result in this function, and from this point on, we can use our collection. So back to the home template. Instead of writing this entire list of chained methods, we can now use the collection helper. And the collection is called projects because we called the file name projects. And we don't have to put the .php in here, it's just a name. And so this will give us the same result as what we have written in here. And it's already making our code here shorter, which is great. But it's also giving us a way to reduce redundancy. So when we now go into our projects controller, we can replace this part as well, and it's now doing the same thing. And while writing two chained methods together might not be such a big deal, just think about the case where you suddenly feel like, shit, I need to sort my projects by a certain field, and I need to apply this sorting all the time. Wherever I use projects, they are always sorted by date, or they are always sorted by title, or whatever, like any other field that you want to sort by. Or you always want to pre-filter. So maybe you want to introduce a logic where projects only get published based on a date, and you want to filter by that date first. And that should always happen, no matter where it is, no matter where it's on your website, you always want to filter by date first. So you could easily introduce this here in your collection method now, and it would be applied to everywhere you use this collection method. So it's instantly available in two places now at the same time. So this is a big plus with collections. So this is great. One rule I want to give you here is don't be too specific with the way that you define your collections. So for example, it wouldn't be a good idea to add this shuffle to your collection in the first place. Then you would automatically always end up with a shuffled list, and you can't undo that shuffle later. So always have like the basic version of that collection in your collection function, and don't be too restrictive with your methods. For example, it's also not really useful to limit the collection first, because you also cannot undo that limit later. If you want to keep that control, just don't paginate, don't limit, don't shuffle before you use the collection later. Once we have this, we can also do nested collections, and this is where it really gets exciting. So for example, let's say we have the collection of projects like we have here, but we also reuse featured projects all the time. So we have this additional filter where we filter by the featured field, and we use this in multiple places. So now you could create a second file here and call this projects featured or featured projects, whatever you like. And then in here, you wouldn't have to write this entire method chain again. You could just go for collection projects and then filter afterwards. So now we are reusing the collection that we introduced first, and then based on that, we filter and then we return this. So if you want to get specific, then you can simply introduce variants of your collections and do the specific filtering or sorting or shuffling or whatever in that collections, and then you have the same effect, but it's easier to reuse those. So those have been collections. They are super powerful. We are just getting started with those examples, but I think you can already get the idea behind it. If the blog starts growing or if your team page starts growing, you could do the same things, introduce new collections for articles, introduce new collections for team members, for products in your shop, etc., etc. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.